guys, it's Lindsay and I am back for another month and another tutorial sew along for you guys. Next month we are doing the Stella skirt, but this month I've planned something extra special for you because it's a little bit brisk outside and a little chilly, and I think I could use an extra layer, so I think I'm gonna get changed. That is so much better. Now I'm all warm and cozy, and doesn't it just look so good? So today our sew along is going to be how to take your Bondi top that you've already done the sew along and it should fit absolutely perfectly. So you're gonna take that and I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful sweatshirt. We're gonna learn how to make the cuffs, extend sleeves, put bands on the bottom, and even do this super nice cowl neck around the top. Oh, I just love it so much, and I know you are too. Okay, let's start about talking what sort of fabrics and things that you need for this project. So for my project today, I am going to be using this sweater fleece knit. You can see it's kind of fuzzy on one side and then just your normal stretch on the other. I got this from a place called Darn Cheap Fabrics here in Australia, but it's just your basic sweater knit, but it's in a luscious color, so I'm super excited. So that's one option for you. You could also use some really nice brushed sweater knit. So this doesn't have the fleece on the inside, but it's thick like a ponte, so it's going to give you really nice wear and stretch and just be so soft and comfortable against your skin. You could also do something a little bit more lightweight, like a jersey. Here I have this really nice lightweight jersey, so it's gonna feel more like just a long sleeve t-shirt, which I think would still be really nice. So let's get our supplies now that we have our fabrics. Okay, so here's what you're gonna need for this project. The first and most important thing is you will have already needed to do the Bondi top pattern and had that adjusted to you. We are gonna be using this to hack it into a sweatshirt. So yeah, you're gonna need this pattern already traced off and ready to go in your size. Then we're gonna be using a little bit of this stuff. It's called Heat and Bond Soft Stretch, and it's just going to help stabilize the hems and the sleeves as we're stitching, so it doesn't get that like bubbly look. So it's not something you have to do this, but it is something that I am going to be using. Make sure you put in a new ballpoint needle. I know even when I taught a class this weekend, they were like, oh, you reminded me that I need to change and put in a new needle, because even in the pattern I'm like, put in a new needle, because they should be changed about every project that you do or every 10 to 12 hours of sewing, because they do get blunt and you will see a huge difference when you do change your needle on a regular basis. It gives you better stitches, better stitch quality, all that stuff. Obviously a thread that matches. And I'm going to use a walking foot today. If you want to, if you have an overlocker, you most certainly can do this entire thing on the overlocker, but not everybody has one of those. So I am going to be doing the whole thing like with my machine. And obviously just some pins to hold everything down. You know how much I love cutting out with a rotary cutter, so I am going to use my rotary cutter. I have the small one here, but I also have my big one because it's quite thick fabric, so it may require me using the thicker blade to be able to go around everything. If you don't have one of these, then just go ahead and use your scissors. It's okay. And then obviously something to mark with, and my measuring tape, because we are going to be making bands for the bottom, bands for the top, and a little bit of a cowl neck. So we are going to be, you know, measuring around circumferences and being able to add those on and cut those rectangles. And we're going to need our measuring tape to be able to do that.
Okay, before I start cutting anything, the first thing I did was I found a shirt, like a sweatshirt that I have that I already love, and I already love the length. You don't have to do this so you can measure on yourself, but sometimes using clothes that you already have to measure really helps give you an idea of what length you're going for. So what I did was I just measured from the shoulder of this down to before where the band hits. And so that ends up being 23 inches, which is about 59 centimeters. So once you're happy with that, I came to my main front piece like that. And then I just measured from my shoulder. Obviously there's going to be a little bit of a seam allowance, so I can take that away down to where I want that to end. And it's nearly in line with that seam, which is what I wanted it to be. I was really hoping it would be, because those 2 points need to line up, because we're just going to be cutting this straight and cutting off the curves, because remember the Bondi top has that high-low hem, and I don't want that. I just want it to be straight across. So what I'm going to do is, instead of ruining my pattern and cutting it, I am going to just fold up at that corner and pin. Now obviously remember we learned how to shorten and lengthen things, so you can make this sweatshirt as long as you want. Just measure and lengthen and make the shirt as long as you want it to be. So I'm just going to pin that up, and then this one, same thing. Okay. Now also, one other thing is that obviously if you've made your Bondi top and you like it quite fitted, then your sweatshirt's going to be quite fitted. I would recommend, if you want a looser, more sweatshirt sort of feel, that don't go up in size in the neck, but perhaps come out to the neck size in the arm and through here. So if you want that baggy sort of extra feel, then just add a centimeter here on the side, blend back into the arm, and then add a centimeter to the length of that as well. But don't change the neck and the shoulder, because you don't want that falling off of you. Okay, so now I have my 3 pattern pieces, and I'm going to cut those out of the fabric right now. Okay, so I have my pattern piece all pinned, and I have my back and my yoke pinned over there. The first thing I want to do is, I do feel like I want this to be a little bit more comfy and baggy. So I'm going to use my fashion multi-tool, and remember each of these are different sizes. So I'm going to use the 1/2 inch cutout to be able to just go through here and mark and add that 1/2 inch. And then here under the arm, it kind of comes up and blends back into the straight, and then we'll add that 1/2 inch to the sleeve. And keep that straight. Now I do want the neck to come up just slightly so it doesn't dip so much in the front. So I'm going to raise that about 1 inch, and then use the end of my French curve to just blend it back into my neck. Okay, that, because we're keeping the shoulder the same, this is going to have absolutely zero effect on the yoke. If I would have brought that in, we would have had to change the yoke as well, but since I've only just brought up that front bit a little bit, we don't need to worry about the yoke at all. And then I have my rotary cutter, and I will just follow my yellow line. Just be careful on these little curves that you don't get out of the way. Or maybe even use scissors on the parts that are kind of scary. Okay, and then you're just going to cut out the yoke and the back, and then I'll tell you what to do next. So I have my machine all set up. I have it with the correct thread, and I'm going to be using this stem stitch. It's also known as a lightning bolt stitch. So it looks like a straight stitch, but it goes like up and down so that the fabric can expand. Okay, so I have my walking foot on. Obviously everything's started, my new needle in here, and I'm going to just pan out a little bit. So our first step is obviously doing the box pleat in the back. So I did my marks, matched them in towards the middle, and pinned them. And then we are going to sew within the seam allowance, which is still 1 centimeter or about 1/2 inch. And it's going to do our little zigzag stitch just to tack this down. Whoops, foot down. I love how this machine tells me what I'm doing wrong. So there is my box pleat, and it looks really nice. And just as you're sewing, make sure that you're using like a pin or a purple thing to kind of hold that together so that doesn't come too far apart when it's going along. And then I'm just going to take my yoke and pin that onto the back and then sew that. Now, if your particular machine does not have a lightning bolt stitch like mine does, you can always use a normal zigzag, but then increase the length so that it stretches out and then decrease the width. So let's see. So something kind of like that is going to give you a much better stitch than just doing a straight stitch, because a straight stitch, when you pull the fabric, it's going to pop. But if you do some sort of a small sort of zigzag, then by adjusting that, it's going to flex and move with the fabric. So the other thing is I am going to top stitch this down. You don't have to, but I am going to. And so because the fabric's so thick, I am going to do a straight stitch, but I'm going to increase my length to about 3.5 so that I get nice long top stitches. All right, I think that looks really super nice. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take and place the front and back right sides together and match the shoulder seams and then sew that. And once those seams are sewn, you have a couple options. You could either press this open and top stitch on both sides. I would top stitch from the front so you could see it, or you can just run this through the overlocker. Either way, this isn't really, it's not going to fray too much. It does look like it's fraying a little bit. So you may decide to overcast those edges or zigzag them just to keep them intact. So I'm going to just overcast mine really quickly, and then we are going to make some sleeves. All right, so now we're ready to make some sleeves. Now you can use your Bondi extension pattern because I've already worked out the sleeve for you, but I just wanted to show you how you can make your own long sleeves. So what I've done here is I've taken, this is the front and the yoke and the back after they've been sewn, and what I've done is I've laid this on my fabric and I've gone ahead and marked my line. So that's the top part of the sleeve. Then I measured on my arm from where the Bondi top finishes to where I want my sleeve to finish. And so for me, that was 16 inches. So I've come from this corner and gone down and marked at 16 and done the same at that corner. And you can go ahead and connect those lines so you have something to follow. Now the last thing is obviously your arm gets smaller by the time you get to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this around my wrist, but I don't want to make it tight. So I'm going to say, I think 10 inches with a seam allowance will be like a pretty good little, oh, let's go 9.5. So 9.5 is also 24. Just fold your tape measure in half and find the middle of this. So the middle of this is 8. And for 9.5, okay, about 5 and 4 3/4 on each side. Okay, and then I'm going to draw a line to those. Okay, so that right there is going to be my sleeve pattern, and that is taking into consideration my seam allowance because obviously I haven't sewn any of that up yet. So it's taking that into account, and then it's going down to my wrist. I have the fabric folded in two, so I'm going to go ahead and cut them both out together. Now, if you're a little bit nervous about this part, go ahead and just cut one, or cut one out of just some extra fabric that you have and mock it up and baste it onto your sleeve and just see if it's going to work for you before you waste any of your fabric. Before I run off and attach this to my top, you will want to make sure that you note how wide that is. Remember, we said 9.5. So whatever yours is, write that down somewhere, because we're going to need to know that distance to make our little cuff in a little while. So I have pinned my sleeve right sides together with the edge of my top. So you can see here how I've done that. And then I'm just going to go and use that lightning bolt stitch and stitch this. And then if you want to, you can overcast it, or you can spread it and you can top stitch it. So now that I have my sleeve on, before I cut and put my band on, this is the bottom part of the sleeve that's going to get kind of just stretched that little bit to put the band on. And I'm going to use soft and stretch. And the great thing about this is that it's iron-on adhesive, but that it also maintains its soft hand and stretch after it's been pressed on. So we're going to take this out of the packet, and it does require a bit of steam. Just make sure, like, this is synthetic, and I nearly burnt it a second ago because my iron was too hot. So yeah, don't do that. Make sure your iron's turned down to the appropriate temperature and test it before going ahead and using this stuff. Okay, so one side has the sticky on it, and this side's the paper. So the paper is the side that goes down. So I'm just gonna rip it. Not gonna be precious about it. I think the more you guys get to know me, the more you'll realize I'm not precious about certain things, and certain things do matter. So it's always a personal preference, but that's how I like it. So just a bit of steam, and it says hold it for 5 seconds. Okay, and you can also see I'm doing this to the wrong side. And then, so whenever you're using adhesives, you always need to read the directions. So if I was going to store this, I would never throw this away. I would always keep this stored with this so that I remember, okay, that one needs steam, hold it on for 20 seconds, blah, blah, blah. So every single interfacing has its own different technique. Also, I like to keep mine in Ziploc baggies, because the air, especially if you live near the ocean, when the air gets to it, it can actually deactivate the sticky. So you just have to be patient with it sometimes. And then I am just going to pull it off like that, and I can see how nice is that. It still is flexible and stretchy, but it stabilized that seam that I'm going to use. So I'm going to do the same to the opposite sleeve, and I'm also going to do the same for my bottom hems and for the around the neck as well. So now we are going to create our bands. So the first thing I need to do is figure out how wide or how long I want my band to be. So that is 9.5 inches. Now I want my cuff band to be a little bit smaller so that this has to fit into the cuff that I'm making. So I'm going to mark it at 9 inches. So here I have this, and I'm just going to take that, and this is a straight edge here. So I'm just going to mark that at 9 inches long. Okay, and then the band doubled, I want it to be or single, I want it to be 1.5 inches. So I'm going to double that, which is 3 inches. And then I'm going to also add an extra inch for my seam allowance, because I'm going to take off 1/2 inch on each side. So I'm going to come up to 4 and across to 9, like that. And so I'm going to cut 2, because obviously I have 2 wrists. And you can use a rotary cutter or scissors. Okay, now I'm going to go to my machine, and I'm going to sew them together like this, and then I'm going to turn them around so that they become a cuff that I can fit my hand through. Okay, yay. So this is what it looks like once it's all done. This is what it looks like when it's folded and sewn. And then what I like to do is come over here and kind of finger press that open and then put that together and then fold the whole rest of the thing around with the raw sides matching like that. And then just give it a nice little pull around so it fits. You could even try it on, make sure it feels nice around your wrist. If you want to, you could even just do a quick little baste so that all these layers stay together. All right, so in addition to making the cuffs, I also want to make the bottom band as well. So what I want to do is I want to measure the back and I want to measure the front, and then I'm going to cut two separate pieces. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and that measures 29 inches. So I'm going to cut one piece of 4. I've already cut this at 4 inches, and then I'm going to cut that at about 29 and a half. So I just want to take off that little bit. You can just label that with a B. Back. And then my front is 25. So I'll cut this. We'll do 24 and a half. So I'll cut that little bit off. Okay, so now I have my front and my back, and then I'm just going to sew those right sides together, obviously, and then just kind of finger press those seams open and then fold them in half like that to create your band for the bottom. And before we attach any bands, our next step is to sew our front to our back right sides together. So I've placed those right sides together. Go ahead and pin them, and I am going to make sure that those little bits match, and then sew from here to here, and then I will go on my overlocker and overcast it, or you can just use a zigzag. So you're going to do that both to the right and the left side, and then that's when we'll attach our bands after we do that. I have successfully sewn my side seam, and I've even tried it on just to make sure that everything's going really smoothly and it fits super nice. So now we're ready to put on our band cuffs. So here I have one, and obviously the first place that we're going to match up is seam to seam. And that is going to be very, very, very bulky when you sew it. So you're just going to need to be ultra careful. Maybe even like walk it over. Okay, so I'm putting a pin there. And then I'm going to find the middle of this, the middle of that, and I'm just going to give that a little bit of a pull. And then match those up. You could even use some clips, like if you have those quilt binding clips, that might be pretty good for this too. Okay, so I'm going to do this one, I'll do the other one, and then I'm also going to pin on my bottom band. Oh, where is it? Okay, so that's the front. First thing, obviously, again, match those little side seams. And remember, you could baste all these layers together if you feel like they're not going to hold together when you sew. And then I'm going to find the middle of my shirt by folding this in half. And I'm going to put a pin here in the middle. And then I'm going to take the one from the middle of my band. And then I'm going to match those up together. And then I'll do the same to the back. Take these two pieces, find the middle, put a pin to mark the middle, and then take that middle pin from the band and match those up together. I always do that first because then you know everything is just positioned evenly all the way around. All right, now I'm going to go to my machine and sew around my cuff and sew around my band, and I'll come back and we're going to press this to the inside like that where our hem tape is, and then we may even do like a little bit of top stitching. This part you can see
look at all of those thicknesses, and you have to have some sort of a walking foot to be able to go through all those layers, but also to keep everything from not stretching. So you see how it just rides on top of all those layers, but it's not pushing anything, and nothing back here is getting pulled or stretched. And hopefully a lot of that's to do with the stuff I ironed on as well. But don't pull it from the back unless it's getting stuck. Just let it feed through the machine nice and evenly, making sure that all 3 layers are together so that you don't get any holes. I've given everything a really good press, attached the cuffs, attached the bands, and then pressed it really nicely with a seam allowance pressed up. And the hem tape that I put on the inside has held that all nice and flat. And then I could go around here if I wanted to and do a little top stitch, totally up to you. And I just love how that's still really flexible and stretchy, but you can see how nice and flat it is all the way around. There is no bubbling or puckering, which is what I was always afraid of, especially with this thicker fabric, but it just sits so beautifully. So now that we have our cuffs on, we are ready for our last step. Oh, before I say the last step, how cool would it be if you had one of those, you know, the machines that can cut out iron-on transfers, and you can make like your own saying or something like that. So you can create a sweatshirt, and this one can be like, I don't know, sewer for life. You come up with your own saying. I'm sure there's really cool. You could be like garment groupie, make your own garment groupies. Anyways, I am going off on a tangent. So our last step is for our neck. Now, you could just bind this as normal, you know, just cut some bias strips and sew it and then flip it underneath. I would cut, you know, make it a little bit smaller so that this doesn't stretch out. But what I'm going to do is I want to create a cow neck. How warm and cozy and snuggly is that going to be? So I've already cut a rectangle that is 12 inches wide, and I just need to figure out what this circumference is. So I have my measuring tape, and I'm just going to go around and measure what this is all the way around. So that's 14. Okay, so that is 27. And remember our rule, how we've been subtracting an inch so that it fits in there better. So I'm going to cut a rectangle 26 by 12. So let's get that up here. Okay, so that's my rectangle. I'm going to do just like I have with the cuffs. I'm going to sew it and then put them wrong sides together and then attach this to the top of my neck so that that kind of all bunches around. Another cool thing you could do is you could find the middle of this and put little buttonholes and then stitch a casing and then put some little, you know, shoelaces or little ties so that this could also have a really cool little tassel or tie or something like that. So I'm going to go sew these end to end, and then I'm going to attach it onto my neck. What I've done is I sewed the cowl right sides together, and then now I've folded it in half just like I did with my other bands. And then I placed a pin in the center, and then I found the middle and placed a pin here. And then I also found the pin. So now this circle has been quartered, and I've gone to my top and I've done the same. Found the center of the front, the center of the back, and then these two edges are also going to be part of that quarter. So I want the seam of this to be at the back. So I'm going to match that up with the back seam. Pin those together. That also is going to reduce the bulk that there's only the one seam. And then match this pin to that shoulder. And then match that front to that middle pin. And then come around to this side
and match these together. And now I'll be able to go to my machine and stitch that all together. And then when I flip that up, that's going to be like this beautiful chunky cowl. That's going to be so, so nice. And then you are going to be all done.
Okay, so that wraps us up for today's sew along for our new sweatshirt, and I hope you really enjoyed learning all those techniques and kind of my thought process behind hacking something, because once you've purchased a pattern and you've gotten it to fit, then it is your base pattern to be able to use it to make all sorts of different things, this included. I've also included a few videos on working with stretch fabric. So if it's something that's new to you and you're a little bit nervous about it, I would highly recommend going and watching my little tutorial on how to work with stretch fabrics. But this is such a basic little sweatshirt. It's very quick. A great way to introduce yourself into working with stretch fabric. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and thank you for being a part of the club. Without you, none of this is possible. So I hope you're really enjoying the content, and I really would love to hear from you in the forum and see where you're at in your progress. Make sure you're messaging me or sending me some of your makes. I want to know that you're in there and you're getting the most out of it. So we will see you all next time.